Okay.
All right.
All right. My first question is, what made you want to become prosecutor?
So really, I decided to run for prosecutor because I'd seen throughout my career how the criminal justice system is fundamentally not working for people. I'm not a prosecutor by training. I am a civil rights lawyer. I started my career as a public school history teacher. I've worked in the city of Detroit, where I've worked with a lot of returning citizens who have been trying to get criminal records expunged, and people with old criminal records from decades past that couldn't get jobs and couldn't get housing because a criminal record was staying with them for life. And so much of what we do in the criminal justice system is needlessly punitive and not rehabilitative. And I think that right now, as we're talking about criminal justice reform, we need to recognize that that has been fueled by the decisions of county prosecutors and district attorneys throughout the country. And so I think it's important to get people in those positions that are going to pull the levers that they have in a fairer and more equitable way, one which takes stock of the sort of deep inequities that we see in our system and understands how involvement in the criminal justice system can hold people back for life. And we really, at the end of the day, need more of a civil rights approach to the criminal justice system. And so I saw all this playing out in Washtenaw County. I saw the sort of policies that we've seen that have fueled mass incarceration for decades playing out in my home county. And so I decided to run. I decided to go for it. And, here we are.
That actually brings me into my next question. So, what are your biggest priorities or goals for criminal justice reform in Washtenaw County?
So I think the top goal is racial equity. We just had a report published by Citizens for Racial Equity in Washtenaw, which is a citizen-led group that analyzed public court data. And what they found is tremendous racial disparities in between how Black people and white people are being treated in the criminal justice system. This isn't news to anybody that has been in a courtroom in Washtenaw County or has been in the Washtenaw County jail. But you see far more Black people be charged with crimes than white people. You see far more Black kids in the juvenile system than white kids. And so that report was a first step. What we are going to do is, consistent with its recommendations, take it to the next level. We need to know every part in our system where we're seeing people being treated unequally because of race, at the charging phase, at the plea bargaining phase. Do you get an opportunity for rehabilitation and treatment, or are you sort of being shuffled through the traditional justice system? We're going to be partnering with third-party researchers, and we're going to be looking at all that, and wherever we find that disparate treatment, we're going to end it. And that is one of my top priorities. A second priority is I ran very strongly on this. I am a firm opponent of cash bail. Cash bail is a system in which, if you are charged with a crime, you are forced to pay a certain amount of money up front in order to secure your freedom. And, by its very terms, that is socioeconomically inequitable. It means that a poorer person who's accused of a not a very serious offense at all is going to be sitting in jail, whereas a wealthy person who may actually pose a threat to the community is going to be able to go free just because they have the money. To my mind, there is no good justification for a cash bail system. There's just not. And I do believe that there are people that need to be held pre-trial for community safety. I get that. But we shouldn't be applying different standards to poorer people and to wealthy people. It just doesn't make sense, especially because what we know is that this is all cyclical. You spend 3 days in jail if you are working class and have a shift job, you are more likely than not to lose your job. You might lose your home. Your kids might have to switch schools, right? And then there's going to be academic achievement gaps that come from that instability for the kids, right? So what we're doing just is inequitable. It's not working, and that's going to be a major priority of mine as prosecutor as well. Is not seeking cash bail and trying to apply the same standards to everybody, regardless of how much money they have in their bank account.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, my next question is, how has police brutality affected you or others around you?
Yeah. So look, I'm a white guy, and I'll be honest, I don't know what it's like to be pulled over for a traffic violation, to see the flashing lights in the background and to wonder if my name is going to join so many others as victims of police violence. When an officer pulls me over, I don't fear for my life. I'm annoyed, but I don't worry that it's going to escalate into a situation where I may end up dead or severely injured. So I can't pretend that I come at this from a personal perspective. You know, being white gives you privilege, and it's invisible, right? Because it's the lack of having to fear for your life when you're pulled over. It's not being followed around in a store when you walk in to buy something, right? And it's invisible, but you don't think about it because it's not there. At the same time, look, like so many others across the country, I have seen the videos, and I watched in horror, as George Floyd was murdered, as Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times, as Eric Garner was murdered, and the list goes on. Philando Castile, right? I mean, these are shocking images that I think have led a lot of people, both Black people who have lived with this for years. And let's be honest, this didn't start with cell phone cameras. We just are seeing it now over the last 5 years because everybody has a camera in their pocket. So, for many of us, it's seeing those images about what was going on for decades, frankly, has galvanized us. And, though I don't have personal experience with it, and I'll never know what it's like to be Black in America, I think, like so many other people, seeing these images has just reiterated the urgent need to reform policing and to reform our criminal justice system, and to end brutality that doesn't just attach to policing, but really is manifested throughout our system, even beginning in education with the school to prison pipeline,
Right.
and certainly through to some of the practices that we see in the prosecutor's office and the justice system more broadly.
So with that being said, seeing all like the videos and the images, so how do you think that could be an example for our community, and what would police accountability look like? How would that be good for our community?
Yeah, so there's several things, but I'll say that we need to really look at the policies that are in place that allow bad officers to continue policing. And if you look at a lot of these incidents, right, a lot of the cases in which Black men or women were murdered by police officers, it is not the case that was the first time that officer was accused of wrongdoing or was a subject of a complaint. I think the officer that murdered George Floyd had something like 17 prior offenses on his disciplinary record, yet he was able to stay on the force. That shouldn't happen. And the other thing that we need to look at, and this may take movement at a national level, but we should be looking at it in the state too, is if you are fired from your job as a police officer because of misconduct, because of excessive force, because of racially biased policing, what have you, you should not be able to just pick up and walk just down the street to the neighboring community and start working there. That happens far too frequently, and we really need a national registry of bad cops, of police officers that have abused their authority. But if it doesn't come nationally, we need to start looking at it urgently right now at the state level and at the local levels to make sure that the first sign of the first complaint somebody gets against them, the first sign that somebody is abusing their authority, they are not permitted to wear that uniform, that badge, to carry that gun, to have the power over people in the community, and they're not allowed to just go down the road to anybody else's community and continue that cycle of abuse.
I agree. So when you say nationally, some people have like a distrust in the media nationally and locally. So can you talk about that?
Um, so as it relates to policing, or um, yeah, look, I think there is a lot of distrust in the media right now, and part of it, I think, quite frankly, is spurred on by the president who attacks the media, and by the sort of undermining of media credibility. And look, I think we all have to recognize that media is imperfect, that media members do have sort of biases that just as human beings come out in their work. But I also think that there is a lot of great independent investigative journalism going on that has really shown a light on a lot of the problems with police misconduct and police brutality. The New York Times has been doing some great articles relating to Breonna Taylor's death, and great investigative journalism that not just delves into the story behind it, and I think has shown a light on some inconsistencies in what the officers said happened, but also I've read some of those articles, and I think they've done a great job humanizing and Breonna Taylor, such as she's not just a name, that she was a person who was dedicated to helping her community, was a nurse, and was turning her life in a positive direction, right, and had it sort of tragically cut short by police violence. So media is media. There's some good journalism, there's some bad journalism, but hopefully folks can lift up the good journalism and the great investigative reporting that is shining a light on a problem that often remains in the darkness, whereas at the same time recognizing the biases that may exist from other sources.
Where do you suggest the youth should get some of their media or news from?
That's a great question. So I will say a few things. Number one, I generally think, though it's not perfect, I think that national media outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post often do great work covering a lot of these bigger issues. The other thing, if you're particularly interested in criminal justice issues and in issues surrounding police brutality and racial equity, one of the best outlets out there is called The Appeal. It's a website, and it specifically covers the injustices in our legal system and our criminal justice system, and it shines a light on a lot of this stuff that just flies under the radar. They've been covering county prosecutor races across the country, right? And they do really great in-depth dives as to what's going on behind the closed doors of our legal system, and with policing, and sheriffs are now a huge focus of theirs. So and they cover it from a national angle, but they often dive really deeply into local races. So if there's a local political race, or there's something interesting going on in the justice system locally, it's very likely that they'll be that they will be covering it. So it's specifically focused on the criminal justice system, and I think it's just a tremendous resource, and they do fantastic independent journalism from sort of a reform angle.
Okay. My last question will be, how has COVID-19 affected you, people around you, and what you do as prosecutor?
So it's affected everything. And my day job is in the city of Detroit, and we were hit very hard in Detroit during the initial phases of COVID, and I know people. There are people that I worked with that lost their lives. In terms of the broader community, we've lost a lot of people here in Washtenaw, and beyond that, I think this has affected us because it's imposed sort of collective trauma on everybody. Going on with 7 months now of a pandemic and lockdown, and not being able to engage in sort of human interaction, that is really hard for everybody. And even if, we haven't gotten sick or lost loved ones to the illness, I think we have to recognize that COVID-19 is affecting people's sense of well-being, their mental health, their economic security in a lot of ways, with the economic downturn that's coming from that. And we are, as a country right now, dealing with collective trauma. So what does that have to do with the prosecutor's office? Well, quite candidly, we often see manifestations of trauma in the justice system. That is what drives a lot of uh, criminal charges and behavior that ends up in criminal charges. I think it's important to recognize the trauma that we've all been through. And if we're really serious about mitigating its harms, I think we need to work together with mental health, work together with schools. And I think now more than ever, it's a time to be rehabilitative and understanding, and give people, the second chances they deserve. Keeping constant the need to protect public safety, because if we don't, we're just going to have this sort of endless cycle of trauma to violence, to more trauma, to more violence. And if you fail to address the trauma that's at the root of it, the insecurity that people are facing right now, emotionally, socioeconomically, in terms of their mental health, we are never going to break that cycle, and we could be in for a really rough patch. So that is something that I am keeping front and center with everything that I'm going to be doing when I take office, because ultimately the prosecutor's job should be, to prevent harm from ever happening in the first place, not just to be reactive to it and punitive on the back end.
All right. Well, that would be a wrap up. Do you want to say anything about yourself and what more do you do? Like explain your job description for the ones who don't know.
Sure. Yeah. So the job that I'll have on January 1st as the prosecutor is, I'm the head elected prosecutor for Washtenaw County. And what the prosecutor does is, they are really responsible for everything that comes through the legal system after that sort of initial arrest or charges being sought by law enforcement. So so somebody's arrested, right? The prosecutor decides whether to bring charges in the first place, and the prosecutor has discretion not to charge somebody. Right. So they can say, look, this case isn't in the interest of justice, or I don't think the evidence is here, and we're going to decline the charges. Or they can decide to move forward with the charges, right? And they can decide to charge somebody for a high level offense or a lower level offense, depending on the circumstances. And this is all the prosecutor's choice. They can decide whether somebody gets an opportunity for rehabilitation and treatment, or whether they go through the traditional sort of adversarial legal system where you're in court, and it's a question of whether and how much you're going to be punished. Prosecutor also oversees all of the juvenile cases, so all the juvenile justice cases as well. The prosecutor brings those if they're bringing a delinquency petition, and all the same things that I said with respect to general crimes are true with respect to juvenile delinquency. The prosecutor's office decides whether to file those petitions, whether somebody should get opportunity for a treatment program, whether to seek to put somebody in the juvenile detention center. So this is why it's important, I think, to have people in prosecutors' offices that come at this work from more of an equity perspective, because our punishment first mentality just hasn't worked for a very long time. And I think it's important that we start thinking about things differently.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and joining us. Also, I forgot to put my name on here. My name is Makayla McKinney. I go to Belleville High School, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. So you just close it off, and then you can send it to Alex Thomas, or how does that work?
Yep. I think that's how it'll work. And Alex can edit it as he likes. So
thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for doing this. It was great talking to you. What year are you?
What'd you say?
What year in high school are you?
I'm in 11th grade. I'm
11th grade. All right. Well, that's awesome. And you're interested in journalism longer term, or?
Maybe so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like this.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're good at it. So, so if I can ever be of any help, I had sort of a journalism background before I, in high school and
Oh.
college and stuff. So, if you ever want to sort of bounce ideas off me, you know where to find me now. You got my contact info.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.